And we continue our conversation with State Department of Administration Secretary Joel Brennan. Lots of growth projects the state has seen over the past years. Do you see more of that coming, or are we kind of at a standstill?
Oh, I hope that we're at a point where we can still continue to springboard into the future. When we go, no matter where we're going around the state, whether it's me or the governor or other members of the administration, one of the biggest issues we're hearing from people is workforce. And so the state has the opportunity to grow. There's innovation here. There are sectors that are growing significantly. But one of the challenges is making sure that we have a pipeline of workforce to be able to be employed in those jobs, not only now, but making sure that that pipeline exists for years to come. So I think as much as anything, the state's opportunity for growth is directly tied to workforce development, to K-12, to the university system. And I think the governor has tried to make and propose investments in those places to ensure that we do have that pipeline continuing.
For bids on contracts for big jobs in the state, are you getting mostly in-state contractors, or are we getting some out-of-state bids as well?
I think most of those contracts go to companies around the state, but the biggest issue for them, no matter what, is the access to, right now in a tight labor market, access to employees and access to the kind of employees who are going to show up day after day and have the kind of the skills and the interest to stay on that job. So part of the responsibility of the state and the local units of government we work with and local corporations is to just ensure that we continually are working to make sure that we have employable and ready workforce.
Some of the big news this past week on the part of Governor Evers was him coming out and saying on the Foxconn deal, it doesn't appear as though 13,000 jobs are going to be created. What's the inside story on that? What are you hearing from Tony Evers?
Well, Foxconn is an issue that I have dealt with virtually every day since the governor took office. So I'm part of the group that has ongoing dialogue with Foxconn on a weekly, sometimes a daily basis. And I think the things that are positive about where Foxconn has gotten to in the first few months of this administration is we have very well defined what their objectives are and what they're going to be doing over the next 18 months. They've committed to building a project in Racine County, in Mount Pleasant, that in round numbers they're talking about 1,500 jobs and about $2 billion of investment as a first step there. And we all think, everybody I think, thinks that that's a positive step. But 1,500 jobs and $2 billion is not the $10 billion and 13,000 jobs. This could be the first step towards that, but I think the idea and what this was sold as in the last administration, that almost immediately you were going to have this, a cascading of $10 billion put in and these thousands of jobs created. Frankly, that's not the way that the economy works all the time. Mm-hmm. Some of the changes that have happened over the last 18 months have been because of global market forces and Foxconn responding to those. So I think it's important for the state also to be able to respond to those changes as well.
Now, Republicans seem to want to let those contracts stay as they are. The governor wants to make some changes. Where do you see that going?
Well, I think this is where we are now is an evolution of the conversations that started in the early days of the Evers administration and even in the final days of the Walker administration, where the deal has changed from where it was. Initially, it was this LCD plant. They call it a Generation 10.5 plant. And the entire contract and the legislation is based on what's called that Generation 10.5 plant. They have said they're not going to do that. So in some ways, amending that contract and changing it just for that is one of the things that absolutely has to be done, no matter where you stand. Whether you're an advocate for Foxconn or whether you're not, they are not doing the project that's outlined in the contract. And so that's one area where there needs to be change made.
So if you could look into your crystal ball, where do you see this Foxconn thing finally ending?
Well, I think,
what are we going to have?
I hope that in the next 18 months, for the sake of the local communities that are invested in this, Mount Pleasant, Racine County, the city of Racine, and from the state standpoint, and even from Foxconn, I hope and expect that what we're going to see is that there will be buildings coming out of the ground in the next 2 to 3 months. Though it'll take a year to construct those, to fill those up with the equipment that Foxconn has ordered. And in the best case scenario, 18 months from now, in the fourth quarter of 2020, you'll see people going to work and manufacturing happening on that site. What happens from there, I think that is something to be determined based on what the future global market forces are with Foxconn, what their industry is doing, what's happening elsewhere around the world. And so I think what we're all expecting and what the governor would expect is the continuation of the conversations that we have had to date and some really success in the next 18 months in getting things going there. What happens after that, I think that's still to be determined.
Right. Let me turn to broadband access in rural areas. Walker administration, they got behind it. Where does the current administration stand on that?
Well, I think Governor Evers believes that broadband expansion is one of the really important economic development tools for the entire state. There are parts of the state still that don't have access, and there was an investment made in the Walker administration. I think what the governor has proposed in this budget is doubling what the Walker administration had done in the last biennial budget. So I think they spent somewhere in the neighborhood of about $40 million to try to expand broadband in the final Walker budget. The Governor Evers has proposed about $78 million to go towards expanding broadband and making sure that this is an available and accessible tool in schools and libraries, but also in people's homes, and making sure that in the rural areas of Wisconsin that everybody has access to these because these are important educational and economic development tools.
Yeah, this is something big for farmers. A lot of farmers don't have access to this.
And it becomes part of their business. It's
Right.
the way, as technology enhancements come and those advancements happen, it's an opportunity for them to plan what they're doing and to execute on those things. And if they don't have access to it, it's one more economic development or agricultural development tool that just isn't there for them.
Right. We continue with Joel Brennan after this break, so please stay with us.